Continue watching and learning. Continue watching and learning. Continue watching and learning. Continue watching and learning. Continue watching.
So we are done talking about the dramatological analysis and also the looking glass theory that is actually under the scope of symbolic interactionist perspective. Now we will move forward to another perspective or another theory, and that is the labeling theory. Actually, when we talk about the symbolic interactionism, it is basically a theoretical approach that can be used to explain how societies and or social groups come to view behaviors as deviant or conventional. So labeling theory, differential association, socialist organization theory, and control theory fall within the realm of the symbolic interactionism. But in this perspective of sociological perspective in understanding the self, we will just focus on the labeling theory. So what we will be talking now is the labeling theory. So according to this theory, although all of us know we usually violate the norms of our society from time to time, and that few people would actually consider themselves as deviant. Me, for instance, I sometimes deviate from the social norms, the way that is being accustomed by my family, but I don't consider myself deviant. So those who do, however, have often been labeled as deviant, or perhaps you call it deviant or deviant by the society, and have gradually come to believe it themselves. So labeling theory actually examines and it examines the ascribing of particular deviant behavior to another person by the members of the society. Thus, what is considered as deviant is determined actually on the okay, not really much on the behavior themselves, but it is more on the people who commit them. Okay, so again, let us be very clear with that one, that when we say what is considered deviant or deviant is determined not much on the behaviors per se that is considered as a deviance, but it is actually more on the people who committed them. So by it is by their reactions also of others, that is actually being based on the behavior that is being seen from them. So as a result, what is considered deviant then changes over time and can actually vary significantly across cultures. So, according to a sociologist named Edwin Lemert, he expanded the concept of labeling theory, and he identified the two types of deviance, and that actually affect our identity formation. According to Edwin Lemert, the two types of deviance are the primary deviance and then the secondary deviance. So he said that in primary deviance, it is actually a violation of norms that does not result in a long-term effects. It does not make others actually views you or gives you a particular image, or it does not actually just it just you deviate into a particular norm, but it doesn't provide much of an effect. Okay, there. So it's like this. But when you drive, okay, so let's say for instance I was driving, then I was over speeding, but then when I receive a ticket for speeding ticket, that does not necessarily make me a bad person, right? It's just that I was overspeeding and then I received a ticket for violating the traffic rules, but not necessarily that I become a criminal. So that particular scenario is an example of a primary deviance. So there. Um, I just did something which is beyond or deviant from our social norm, and I was actually sanctioned. What is my sanction there? I was given a traffic ticket. Now, it does not actually alters my self concept. It does not change my self identity. The same as the way how people will look at me. People will not judge me or they will not treat me differently. So they are still considering me as their friends, just a normal citizen who has committed a traffic violation. So that is a primary deviance. Now, the second, according to Edwin Lemert, is the secondary deviance. So what is a secondary deviance? So according to Edwin Lemert, it occurs when a person's self-concept and then his behavior begin to change after his or her actions are being labeled as deviant by the members of the society. So, an example is that let's say for instance, a high school student. I think you you have done this already when you were in high school. But just for the sake of discussing, guys, okay, please do not feel bad if you were able to relate to it. So here, as I was saying, a high school student who often pats classes and gets into fights. Now, this particular student has been reprimanded frequently, of course, first from cutting out from the class, so the teachers will definitely get mad, or it could be by the school staff, it could be by the discipline, the students affairs office. So he or she could be called by the head of SAU, and also he would be reprimanded by his parents. Why? Because he is supposed to be in school. He was supposed to do something and then he omitted to do that particular duty or responsibility that he is supposed to do, and that is to go to school. So that basically makes him a bad person according to the people around him. So in this case, the primary deviance, well, there is no changes in your self-concept. But in secondary deviance, because you're already reprimanded, so there is this gravity, no? There's a sense of gravity already. So being reprimanded, you are also being given a very strong label. So your school might label you as a juvenile delinquent, okay? Your parents might label you as kahit ulo, irresponsible, things like that, okay? Now, in secondary deviance, guys, it really is actually strong because you are being labeled negatively, most particularly by by the society that you are so close. I mean, by the people that you are so close to. Now, because of that, you will now have your master status, and then basically the master status is a label that describes the chief characteristics of an individual. So some people might see themselves primarily as doctors, artists, grandfathers, but some people might see themselves as convicts, addicts, okay, uh, how would I say this one? Beggars also. So that is a master status. Then you might be asking, Mom, why is beggar included? Because you fail to do something that you're obliged to do, and that is to work to provide for your own consumption, to provide for your own daily needs. But instead, you deviate from the norms, and instead of working you prefer to beg, and so there your master status is now a beggar. And because you keep on violating our laws, our rules, and the social norms of our society, then you've been convicted, okay? you've been tagged as criminals and you've been convicted, you went to jail, and so there you are being labeled as such negatively. It is because out of your own doing. Because when we say deviance, guys, the primary deviance is actually um it's basically the first level, and it's not much of a heinous crime. So it's like a very light deviation. No, it's just a very small violation that you have committed, and so it doesn't alter anything, and that you were just being sanctioned. You are being given a bill of attainder. A bill of attainder is actually you're being fined, meaning you will be sanctioned to pay a particular amount of money so that you will get out of it. So that is your punishment. Okay, you are sanctioned to fine, to pay a sum of money. But when we talk about the secondary deviance, the punishment there, the sanction there could be the imprisonment for a year or 6 months. Okay, and then worse is that if you become a habitual delinquent, because after being in jail, let's say for instance, long, just for the sake of discussion, you were able to hit someone because unintentionally he provoked you, and then you were provoked, and so you hit him, and so in the process of hitting him with that heated moment, unintentionally you killed him. So that is homicide. And then because society is, our society is really somehow worse. So even if you did it out of self-preservation, that was just actually a self-defense, but still you were able to kill that person who provoked you, and so that is homicide. Then you are convicted as a criminal, and then what will happen? People will then stigmatize you and label you as a criminal. Okay, so basically after that, maybe if you would then feel that because there is already alteration as to your self concept, and even to your self identity, and worse, to your self esteem, then you would become a habitual delinquent, no, and then you will just keep on doing things that are wrong, and so you will have this master status. So that is actually, guys, the labeling theory of deviance according to Edwin Limert. Okay, so I hope you were able to understand that particular theory of labeling or tagging, theory of deviance. Now, another thing is that I have included the deviance and social stigma. The reason that I include this one in our discussion is because I want you to give importance to the mental health of each one of us being a part of one society. Okay, so deviance and social stigma is actually very relevant to our present society. It is happening in our community, actually, guys. You may not know it, but perhaps you were also one who is being stigmatized. If not, you are one that is being a stigmatizer. Okay, so it's either you are the one who is being stigmatized or you are the stigmatizer, because actually this is happening in our society unconsciously. It exists in our society. So when we say social stigma, it's actually like this. A social stigma and deviance is the disapproval of a person because they do not fit to the required social norms that are given in the society. So social stigma is the extreme disapproval of an individual based on social characteristics that are perceived to distinguish them from the members of the society. Social stigma is so profound that it overpowers the positive social feedback regarding the way in which the same individual adheres to the other social norms. So, for example, let's have Jamie. For example, Jamie might be stigmatized because she has a limp. Now, take note, guys, that having a limp for a while. I'll just charge my laptop. Okay, so an example for social stigma. Uh, Jamie is stigmatized because she has a limp. Is having a limp Jamie's fault? No, right? You had a limp maybe because the moment you were born with it, or perhaps you had an accident. So that was actually beyond Jamie's control. But then stigma attaches to Jamie because of her limp. No, um, there are overpowering ways in which Jamie might be social, normative, perhaps like she is pretty. She is a very good Christian. She might be a she might be a heterosexual female with limp, okay, but the limp marks Jamie, no? And then despite of her other traits, the society disregarded that one and we just labeled Jamie as Jamie the limp. So that is stigma, guys. Stigma actually really plays a primary role in our sociological theory. In fact, Emil Durkheim, one of the founders of the social sciences, he began to address the social marking of deviance in the late 19th century, including Irving Goffman, the American sociologist. He is also responsible for bringing the term and the theory of stigma into the main social theoretical fold. In fact, in Goffman's work, he presented the fundamentals of stigma as a social theory, and then he included in his interpretation of stigma that as a means stigma as a means of spoiling identity. Okay, according to Irving Goffman, he referred to the stigmatized trait's ability to spoil and the recognition of the individual's adherence to social norms in other facets of self. So Goffman, with that particular perspective of Goffman, with that idea, he come up to this three main types of stigma. Okay, I hope you were able to follow. Guys, Emil Durkheim, founder of social science, he already began this this began. I'm sorry. Stigma plays a role in sociological theory, and so Emil Durkheim, one of the founders of social sciences, began to address the social marking of deviance in the late 19th century. And this has been echoed by Irving Goffman, who is an American sociologist. Actually, Goffman is responsible for bringing the term social theory, okay, of stigma into the main social theoretical fold. So Goffman introduced the social, the theory of stigma into the world of sociology. And in his work, he presented the fundamentals of stigma as a social theory, including his interpretation of stigma as a means of spoiling identity. By this, Goffman referred to the stigmatized traits uh, to actually referring to the ability to spoil. So, Goffman said, in recognition of the individual's adherence to social norms in other facets of the self, he further identified three main types of stigma. So, the following types of stigma that Goffman identified are: number one, the stigma that is associated with the mental illness. Then number two, the stigma that is associated with the physical deformities. And number three, the stigma that is attached to the identification with a particular race, ethnicity, religion, or ideology. So ultimately, guys, stigma is about social control. It is a corollary to this, that stigma is necessarily a social phenomenon, and it has something to do with our society, because without the society, then one cannot have a stigma, right? Because it is actually our society who's responsible for giving this number one type of stigma, and that is associated with our mental illness. If we saw someone who is crazy, or if we know that someone is being diagnosed with autism, then we just think that that particular someone is autistic without knowing that autism has different spectrum. Okay, it could be that that person has only an is only an ADHD. When you talk about ADHD, it's just attention deficiency hyperactive disorder, and I think all kids has that. I mean, all the kids have that, rather. Just they are just being kids, they're so hyperactive, and so because of their being hyperactive, because of their being so playful, they have this attention deficiency, right? It doesn't make them crazy, it doesn't make them mentally retarded, but then we stigmatize them. Okay, and why is that? Because society is very prejudicial, judgmental, if not ignorant to the facts. So this is how detrimental, and this is how important. That is why we have to be very careful. We have to be mindful and sensitive, guys. Okay, so that we, in our own simple ways, we will be able to eliminate the stigma when it comes to social deviance. Now, the second one is the deformities, right? The physical deformation. I think it's just really beyond our control when we don't look as normal as we are ought to look. No, so thank God we're beautiful. Actually, thank God we are complete. We don't have this clip palate and our nose is pointed. So let us not make fun of those who we think are ugly because they don't look like us. Let us just acknowledge and be grateful of the physical appearance that we have, but let us not make fun of those who are having physical deformation, because mind you guys, it is very hurtful, and they are not to be blamed, and so they should not be mocked for it. And the third one is a stigma attached to the identification with a particular race, ethnicity, religion, and ideology. Okay, um I'm sorry, guys, but until now, I could see that the people from Luzon are still mocking the Visayas. And so they would always call us, Uy, Bisaya man, you are Bisaya, Uy, Inday, Dudong. So they are like treating us like a low level of species, and they have this superiority complex because of our ethnicity. But it doesn't make us less of a human being if we're a Bisaya. Mind you, for all you know, we are way more intelligent, brilliant, successful. So your ethnicity, your race, your ideology, your religion, it is not it is not an issue actually, and so you must not be stigmatized with it. So ultimately, stigma is about social control, guys. Uh, it has really have to do with our society, and so our society must be informed. Okay, so the very reason why I include this one, because I want you to be the first one to do it in your society. If your society is not yet doing certain actions to limit the social stigma, I hope in your own little ways you will be able to do it. Okay, so as I was saying earlier, to have stigma, one must have a stigmatizer and someone who is stigmatized. And as such, this is a dynamic social relationship. Okay? So it's just like there's a victim and there's the criminal, or there's the culprit. There's the stigmatizer, the culprit, and there's the stigmatized, who is the victim, guys. So it's really a dynamic social relationship that is a very unhealthy relationship in our society. So, given that stigmas arise from our social relationships, the theory places an emphasis not on the exercise of the deviant traits, but on the perception that is actually marking of a certain traits as the deviant, okay, or by the second party. So, for example, let's have Jamie again. Okay, what if Jamie has this psychiatric diagnosis, but Sally, who is a friend of Jamie, instead of actually perceiving Jamie to be diagnosed to have the psychiatric diagnosis, then Jamie might be treated differently by Emily because Emily becomes indifferent. Emily becomes so maybe just prejudicial when it comes to Jamie's psychiatric diagnosis. So in that particular scenario, guys, who's doing wrong? Who's actually the deviant? Is it Jamie who is actually having this psychiatric diagnosis, but actually it is beyond her control and she doesn't do anything? But Emily, who is actually, acting differently towards Jamie, then you be the better judge, guys. And I know for sure we will agree that the one who's doing something wrong here, or the stigmatizer here, is Emily. And then Jamie is actually just a mere victim. He is the one who is, she rather, she's the one who is being stigmatized. So the point here, guys, is that stigma actually depends on another individual's perception and knowing and understanding about the stigmatized trait. So, as stigma is necessarily a social relation, it is necessary, guys, that we have to imbue with relations with our relations of power. And so stigma actually works to control the deviant members of the population and encourage conformity. So again, please let us be mindful and be very much aware so that we can help put an end on the social stigma, and most especially when it comes to the mental illnesses and to the physical deformities of our fellow humans, okay, living in our society. Um, we have to take note that one might be having a social anxiety disorder, but for all you know, that person is very brilliant and he could be the CEO of his own company. Or a friend of mine, she is actually a doctor now and she has an OCD. What is OCD actually? It is an obsessive compulsive disorder. And mind you, guys, it is actually beyond her control. So let us not stigmatize these illnesses, because these illnesses exist, but it is beyond the control of the stigmatized person. Let us not be the stigmatizer. Okay. Another schoolmate of mine, I could think of. He is actually now an incumbent mayor in their town. He's actually my classmate in college, and is also a schoolmate in high school. But he had a depression during our high school days, but it doesn't stop him to become the mayor. He is actually the leader and he is being trusted by his community. So, guys, having these mental illnesses, having these mental problems or physical deformities, it doesn't make us less of a human being. It doesn't limits our ways and means to be successful. So let us not be a stigmatizer, and let us acknowledge that particular person as a person, as an individual person, and as a person with morality, with dignity, and just a regular person like us existing in our society. So there you have it, guys. We are basically done discussing the different sociological theories in relevance to sociological perspectives, most particularly the structural functionalism theory. And we talked we talk all about the structural functionalist perspective. Then we also tackle the social conflict perspective, which was actually introduced by Karl Marx, and it was echoed by Max Weber, and it was added by C. Wright Mills. Okay, and then we tackle also the symbolic interactionism theory. We talk about the symbolic interactionist perspective, most particularly the dramaturgical analysis, which is introduced to us by Irving Goffman, and that was followed by another very important perspective, which is the um, Looking Glass Self Theory by Horton Cooley, and it was really interesting, no, because according to it, we see ourselves based on how people perceives us, but basically we were able to go through with it and we process, and then we totally understand that it is just another perspective that we have to check on and we have to be familiar with, and so we must be able to correct also the 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 specifics of that particular analysis or perspective. And then another very important theory, which is under the symbolic interactionist perspective that we have discussed, was the theory of deviance or the labeling theory of deviance. And in connection to that, we also tackle the deviance, particularly the social stigma deviance. So I hope that you were able to understand everything, and I hope that you were able to totally get the comprehensive idea of those things that we have tackled. But then, if you have some questions, or let's say there are some things that you are confused of, please do not hesitate to ask me during our synchronous classes. So now let us have the culminating part, and then let us now talk about a very important concept in sociological perspective, and that is the sociological imagination. So actually, guys, the sociological imagination is a very good perspective, and this is introduced to us by C. White Mills, who is a contemporary sociologist. He provides a framework for understanding our social world that far surpasses any common sense notion we might derive from our limited social experiences. So he brought a tremendous insight into the daily lives of the societies, and I mean to the society, including to the society's members. And he further stated that neither the life of an individual nor the history of a society can be understood without both. So, according to him, the sociological imagination is making the connection between the personal challenges and the larger social issues. So, Mills actually identifies troubles, according to him, that the troubles that we have are actually personal challenges, and that when we talk about issues, this actually refers to the larger social challenges, which is also known as biography for the troubles or for the personal challenges, and for the issues or the larger social challenges, C. Wright Mills call it the history, respectively. So Mill's conceptualization of the sociological imagination actually, guys, it allows us to see the relationship between the events in their personal lives, which is the biography, and then the events in their society, which is history, according to C. White Mills. So, in other words, he said this mindset provides the ability for the individuals to realize that the relationship between personal experiences and the larger society's issues as well. So, according to Mills, he said that personal trouble are private experiences within the character of the individual, and that the range the the the, the range of their immediate relations to others. Okay, so again, according to Mills, he said that personal troubles are actually private problems experienced within the character of the individual and the range of their immediate relation to others. So Mills identified the fact that we function in our personal lives as actors and actresses who actually make choices about our friends, our family, our groups, our schools, and we make decisions, we make choices on issues which is within our control. And he said that we have a degree of influence in the outcome of the matters within the personal level. So it's something like this actually, guys. If you're a college student who parties 4 nights out of 7, and you rarely attends to your classes, and of course you never do your homework, and that is actually what we call as a personal trouble. Okay, and that personal trouble actually interferes with our with our odds in attaining success in our college life. Of course, what do you expect if you just keep on partying and you never study? So in that particular scenario, we consider it as your personal trouble. However, when we talk about it in the society's perspective or as a whole, there could be like 50% of all the college students in our country never really graduate college, and we label it as being a larger issue. Okay, so I hope you were able to follow you having personal trouble with your college life because you basically just don't care for it. You were just partying. But in the wider scope, okay, in a larger social issue, there's actually 50% of all the college students in our country never graduate college. So what he is saying here is that the larger or the larger social or public issues are those that lie beyond one's personal control and the range of one's inner life. Why is it? Because you yourself, okay, with your being irresponsible, you're adding to the problem of the larger social public. If only you were responsible as a student, perhaps the 50% would have only been 49%, thus lessening the problem of our society. So I hope you were able to follow that one. I think I emphasize it clearly, no? So this pertains actually to the society's organizations and processes. Further, these are rooted in our society rather than in the individual. Because according to Mills, guys, nationwide, students come to college as freshmen who are ill prepared to understand the rigors of college life. Okay, so according to Mills, so sometimes the larger problem, when we look at it, there's a reason behind. So in this particular scenario, the reason for that is that it's because, rather, nationwide students come to college as freshmen who are actually ill prepared to understand the rigors of college life. You are not prepared for what is you are about to embrace, the kind of life that you will be having. So they haven't been often challenged. No, you are not introduced to the hardships. Okay, in your high school years, perhaps you are so pampered, so you are not being oriented as to the challenges that you will be having during your college life. And so in this particular case, guys, you will now be having difficulties. And what would happen when you will be having these difficulties in your college life? Definitely, you will be having a hard time doing the adjustments that is definitely required from you. Why is it? Because teenagers, as you can see, I know for a fact that you could relate this one because perhaps you're one of these individuals that you are just so fond of sending text messages, surfing the net, you're just playing videos or online games. So you just basically hang out with your friends, you watch TV and movie. You just do things that are so light and that are so casual, and it has never give you a sense of responsibility. Okay, it is very few of us who are really had the experience to work to earn money so that we will be able to pay for our own tuition. So where and when would that particular college student get the experience for him to be able to focus his attention being a college student? Where and when could he get the particular sense of responsibility for him to be able to have the rigorous self-discipline which is required in your life as a college student? So that is basically why we are having this 50% college dropouts. So the real power of the sociological imagination is actually like this. The sociological imagination is found in how we learn to distinguish between the personal and the social levels in our own lives. So once we do that, we can make the personal choices which actually best serves us, and it will also be given the larger social forces in which we are facing as of the moment. So a majority of our personal problems are actually not experienced as exclusively as personal issues. So they are rather influenced and affected by the social norms, by the habits, and also by the expectations. So in that case, I think we are all aware that when we are going to consider that particular situation, let us think of this scenario. We have homelessness. Okay, I am homeless, but it is not just me who is homeless. Actually, there are a lot of other individuals who are basically living on the streets. Okay, and then if you say, I am a deviant, okay, I did something, I am a criminal. But actually, guys, in our society, there are other criminals who existed with you and perhaps even still doing crimes momentarily that we are speaking right now. So it's not just you, but it's actually the entire society that is having the same issue as what you are having in a particular way that we call it a personal problem. So I hope you follow, guys. So in all this are actually, how do we call this one? The society has this massive problem based on massive problem, or generally society's issues. It's because it sprouted, or it came from an individual person who has this personal problem. And the very root cause of that one is because of the poor personal choices, which resulted to this societal problem. So, using the sociological imagination, we can view that these issues as interconnected personal and public concern. So, I hope I was able to explain to you the very substance of sociological imagination. And in this video, this is actually the sociological imagination in a nutshell. So please watch the video. This is actually will be a reinforcement of your basic knowledge of sociological imagination.
Don't forget to click like and subscribe. Bye. Don't forget to click like and subscribe. Bye. Don't forget to click like and subscribe.